Hi, I'm Cleavon Davis, and I have questions. A lot of them. Questions about life, success, business, fulfillment, purpose. I'm a thinker. I think a lot. But it's time for me to stop thinking and start doing. I'm here to find the answers to life's most challenging questions and how to find the real purpose in life. How do we turn our dreams into something tangible? How we turn our lives into something we enjoy every day? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to the Muse Report. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Thanks for tuning in to the Muse Report for this episode. This is a special episode, even though it seems like I say that every time, but it really is because this episode is the first episode of 2018. The last episode was talking about 2018, but it was recorded and published in 2017. So this is the first official episode of the year, and it is a really good one. I have with me on this episode special guest Adrian Westney Jr. He is a successful entrepreneur, musician, producer, songwriter, arranger, anything with music. He can pretty much cover it all, and he spit so much knowledge on this episode. We started with how he began his life at a young age and went into the music industry on his particularly unique path. And we got into an interesting topic which I labeled the philosophy of fear, talking about how fear can influence our lives. And this is something I know that every human being can identify with because we're all afraid at times. And that can hinder us, it could compel us to do certain things, it could drive us, but it's all about how you take it and your philosophy on it. So that was a very interesting topic that we talked about too. You would not regret pressing that play button. I know this episode is a little longer than my last ones, but starting in 2018, the episodes might be a little longer because I'm starting to get a little more serious about this podcasting. I hope you hear a distinct difference in the quality of the episodes because I'm putting more time and effort into making these the best that they can be. So make sure you follow the Muse Report podcast on Instagram at muse_lifestyle. That's LYFESTILE. You mix up the Y and the I because that makes it unique, and that was the only name I could get on Instagram because the other ones were taken. But I've been doing enough talking. Without further ado, listen to this episode. I hope you enjoy it with Adrian Westney Jr. And make sure at the end, or even right now, you press that like and review button. Give me 5 stars if you want to, 4 stars, whatever you think is appropriate. But as long as you leave a review and a comment, I want to get back to you and improve in the next episode. So here we go. So it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
And just want to break it down because I've seen your success from my point of view, and I believe lots of other people want to see how you got to where you are today, just as much interested as I am. So hopefully we could break that down. So
yeah, we'll try to do with the time we have.
Yeah.
Glad to be here, and I must say up front, I'm happy that you're doing a series like this. I think that probably many of your listeners will appreciate what you're doing. Probably have expressed that. If they haven't, it's going to come.
I hope so. Yeah. The whole reason I'm doing it is just for one person. If I could get one person, I'll be happy.
That's great.
So starting from the beginning, basically, we know where you are now. We see the end result, which is the case with lots of successful people. Mm-hmm. And we see all the luxuries of what success can bring. But where did it all start for you? as far as being brought up in childhood? When did you start music? The influences that molded you into the man you are today.
Well, music started for me before I knew who I was, really. In that my mother was a musician of note in her first career. Many don't know this, but she was a Royal School of Music graduate. And I didn't know that either until really quite recently.
Wow.
And she left her musical career as a pianist to follow my father,
That's a
who
big
was a
deal.
pastor. Yeah.
That's a big.
And so I knew of her as a church pianist and organist. That's where it started. And of course, as a very young kid, I can recall the whole process of going to choir rehearsal, going to any kinds of rehearsals. And she had plenty of rehearsals to go to as a church musician. And so often I was either sitting on the front row waiting for her to finish, or sitting under the piano or something, trying to, amuse myself as a young kid. So I, before even I was playing piano or singing, I was listening and listening to my mother, listening to those rehearsals, and I guess sort of getting into the whole concept of what my life has been. So I've been through a lot of rehearsals. I didn't know that as a kid, that's what I was preparing to do.
Right. It was bringing you up in the way.
Yeah.
So like, I know lots of children, or not even lots of children, lots of adults started off in music. It's something that is, at least I think, pretty much all over the world, but I know in the Western Hemisphere is promoted for children to take music lessons, because it helps develop the brain and has different benefits as far as intellect, and it's good to have that craft. But lots of people stop. And I'm one of those people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I play music now, but shoot, I could have been way better. Like,
Okay.
I could have been way better if I didn't. Yeah, stop. Regrets. But anyway, was it something that you were always just willing and eager to do, or was it like, come on, AT, let's come to these rehearsals with me. Oh, Mom, I don't want to go. But then you ended up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was not always the willing subject when it comes to music and practicing and rehearsals. In fact, my mom kind of got me started as an example. Following her and getting me into music. One of the things she really did, and we can kind of talk, we may touch on this later on, but I can always remember music being played around even our home. So I was always listening to music, always watching musicians, watching her, etc. Regardless of the level of quality. Fortunately, in my case, with my mother, she was someone of high quality. So I had that around at a very early age. Just a really interesting note here. Take the Messiah. There, of course, we sing that at holiday time and Easter time, and I remember getting into high school and singing in the choir, which was great fun for me, and I loved that. By the way, that was at Pine Forge Academy.
Yeah, my alma mater. Your alma mater, yes.
And it was the first time I was in an organized choir of note, and we were going through these choruses, and I was, the first year I was a bass. The second year I kind of did tenor, because that's what the conductor needed. And I can remember looking at the music and practicing it as a singer, and and remarking to myself, well, this is really easy. And somewhere I just knew these parts,
Mm-hmm.
and not, and a few years later when I matured a bit, that I realized that after sitting through so many rehearsals of my mother playing the Messiah and rehearsing the Messiah,
Mm-hmm.
there are some of those choruses I just innately knew
Right.
the parts.
You'd even know it's like in your subconscious.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting that made an impression on me once I realized what was going on. However, Mom required of me that, and my dad too, that we had to, all of us, my brother and sister, but I had to practice my lessons before I could get out to play. And I always wanted to be out playing ball with the guys, whether it was football or basketball. And they would not allow me to go out until I had practiced my lesson. I didn't like that. I'm somewhat ashamed to say that now, and I try not to say that too much because my mother will, look at me and say, "Well, I didn't know we were punishing you that like that." but the fact is that I did not always enjoy the rigor of practicing, all the scales and the Hanan exercises and all of that stuff.
Tedious stuff.
Right. However, I did it in order to get done so I could get out and play ball with the guys, and that was my motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Really not realizing that years and years later, this would be something that, I was making a living at. I just never realized that.
So was there like a moment, whether it was in grade school or high school, where you realize, okay, this is something that like I enjoy and like I want to keep doing and getting better at?
Yes, it happened in high school when I got into the choir at Pine Forge, and I must thank my choir leader at that time. The first years that I was there at Pine Forge was Inez Reeves, and she did a couple of things. She not only taught the rudiments of music, the basics, what you had to know, but she allowed us to be creative. We always had some creative time, and that allowed us to experiment with chords. And for the first time, I just, it's just becoming fun.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. And then we would, play for song services and praise and worship services and put our chords to the hymns and to the praise songs. And wow, to me that was just something new because at my home I was always required to play what was written and what was expected.
Right.
Which is nothing wrong with that. It's just that I had to do that first before I could experiment. And so here I am at Pine Forge, and then I got into the choir too, and wow, they were singing these songs. Some of them are classic stuff, Randall Thompson stuff, and then we were doing arrangements. And there's one thing I just slip in here that Miss Reeves did for me that I didn't realize what was going on back then, and she probably didn't either. But she had a friend who she had been in school with. His name was Shelton Kilby. And she somehow she had invited Shelton, or Shelton had come through Pine Forge for a visit of some sort. And I just happened to be around, and she happened to introduce me to him. And I remember standing in the corner listening to him play and saying, "Wow, what is this?" Not knowing that later on we'd become friends and actually associates and working together,
Right.
on things. So So that's when music started to become fun. It was more than just the scales. It was the creative part of it. Still didn't think I was going to be, someone who did music all the time, but the enjoyment started there at Pine Forge.
Right. That's interesting. How you describe the fun. That's where I really started to enjoy music too. Was in high school at Pine Forge.
Yeah.
I started to really be like, okay, wow, this is something that could be like really an enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
But lots of people get discouraged with the monotony and the I don't want to say boring, but the parts that aren't as enjoyable, the process, which is okay because if it were easy, everyone would do it.
Right.
But as far as creativity goes, if anyone knows who Jacob Collier is, he's a musical genius and young. He's like 22 or something like that, 23 maybe max. And he came to my university and he did a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that teachers, it was funny because the teachers are asking him questions, trying to ridicule the music students about how to learn music. And he was like, I hate teachers. You guys are doing it all wrong. The system is reversed and all this stuff, and how we should like foster creativity instead of putting music into a box and all this kind of stuff. But often we see the process even to the most experimental music such as like jazz, where it's lots of improvisational stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They learned the basics first. They had like the rules embedded in them, and then they broke them.
Right. They knew what to break.
Right. You have to like know what to break. So I'm saying, even though the tedious, monotonous part of learning the music, the rules, do you always believe that that's the right process? Do you have to go through that process of I don't really want to do this, but I know that in the long haul this could help me break the rules, or should I take the creative side and teach them? Well, these are the things that you could do, but you have to learn this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, for people who are very creative, that run past the whole process of traditional learning,
Mm-hmm.
They arrive at the same place, or a place further, if you could say it sometimes, than some of us who have been through the traditional roads of development. It's hard to say that either way is wrong or right, or that it needs to happen. This, though I know that basics and being taught basics, I know in my case, was a good thing, because sometimes musically I was just so bent on just breaking all the rules. I don't know. I didn't know what rules. I'm playing this hymn, every day at worship, Mom. And why do we have to play a fifth chord to the one chord? Can't we go to the 2 to the 5 to the 1? It's just like, she said, no, Junior, play it right, And playing it right is what I had to learn to do. Probably in my case, if I didn't learn those basics, I would not have played it right.
Mm.
And if you're doing very creative stuff, you still got to play that right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I have friends who have had little or no traditional training, who are doing things that would boggle your mind as far as musicianship goes. And to hear them express, to watch them perform, you can't really say, well, you didn't study all the basics, so you can't do that, because you're sitting there watching them,
they're
doing it. So,
as long as the product's there, right? Yeah.
I believe, though, that the music has to speak, the music has to touch, in the realm of music I've been working in, commercial music, uh, there has to be a purpose to it, and somehow you have to connect your creativity to a purpose. I believe that those who are very creative have that attachment. It's they're expressing something, and the purpose of their communication through music is to affect that purpose, to affect that communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so either way you look at it, there's a purpose behind the music. And I think when musicians grow up or mature and realize that it's not just for their fun,
Mm-hmm.
it's beyond them, they rise to another level.
Yeah, I think that's very that applies to everything.
Yeah.
Really, whatever your niche, whatever your field is, learning those basics so that you can
Yeah.
utilize them at your
Yeah.
will and infuse that creativity, but you have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
And also, when you get to that point where you realize it's not about you, what the real fulfillment comes is from affecting other people.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I think that applies in life in general. All right, so we're in high school and
Yeah.
everything, and we're moving on. Did you go straight to college, or did you freelance?
I did.
Or
I went straight to college, and of course, my upbringing had, I guess you could say, slant me. I don't know if that's the proper word, but I I took a major in another area that I enjoyed, which was mathematics. A little plug here for Pine Forge Academy again, that wonder school up there in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania.
green and white?
I had another mentor who was not a music mentor, but really set an example, a good example, I think, for my life. And he impressed me such that I wanted to study what he studied, which was mathematics. That gentleman's name was Mr. Paul Jones.
Paul Jones, yeah.
Mr. Jones was not only our math teacher, but he's also the basketball coach at the time, the years I was there. And so I was bonded to Mr. Jones for two reasons. So I ended up studying mathematics in college, beginning, and becoming a mathematics teacher like Mr. Jones. Under the theory or the postulate, you would say that I really couldn't make a living as a musician.
Yeah, it's a very
Okay.
common
Yes.
thought of mine, yeah.
Still not realizing that that's what was going to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied mathematics with a minor concentration in music. Took a lot of theory and arranging courses at college level, and got out and got a job teaching music, and was doing some graduate work when the change came. And I can tell you about the change in the next segment if you want.
Yeah, we could go pretty much straight to that, but just one quick thing.
Yes.
Question I thought of was, you said that you were studying mathematics and everything, and it was something that you enjoyed and something that someone really influenced you through.
Yes.
But also there was that bit of it that was like, okay, this is my backup kind of for
Yes.
like if the music
Yep.
thing doesn't work out, I have this other degree, I could
Yeah.
sustain good living.
Yeah.
That's very common and still very prevalent today,
Yeah.
even though mindset and culture has changed a little bit. But I see it literally all the time in college. I see like,
what's going on with your like bio major or something.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I hate biology. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm like, well, well, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
You're like, well, my parents want me to be a doctor and all that stuff. I'm just trying to, get, and they make good money. I'll be straight. After I get my degree, I'll do what I really want to do because I have the money and all that stuff. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay. What do you say? Because I really don't know. Because luckily, I'm in the position where pretty much I've really supportive parents where pretty much anything, if I could say that I wanted to be a professional toe clipper, and
Yeah.
and they would be like, okay, so what do we need to do to get you to do this, which is a blessing. But for that person that's not as fortunate and they're doing something possibly that they don't really like, where do they go?
Okay, let me say some words on that, and you'll have to stop me if I'm going on too long on this. All right,
Just drop as
So
much
I'm
knowledge
gonna-
as
I'm
you
gonna-
want.
I'm going to talk about that here. Okay, so there is yes, I did not. First of all, I wasn't thinking I was going to be a working musician. I didn't think most people in my position could do that. So I looked for what I thought was a well-traveled road, you could put it that way, a security, and then of course, my parents not knowing, working musicians per se, were kind of not too into the music thing, but yes, the science thing or the pastoral road or the teacher educational road, all of those. Yes, those are good roads to follow, and I do believe that they are. I have been positively affected by good teachers. I've been positively affected by great ministers and pastors, mentors. I have also been positively affected by many physicians who were in my life, both as relatives and friends of my parents, and now friends of mine. And so there are other professions that I looked at and that are good and upright professions. And for me, as a thought of a religious musician came up, I could not personally connect the dots between that and life and livelihood, even though it was something I really enjoyed. By this time now, coming out of college, I was like, wow, this is, I had done so much music in my college days as extracurricular activity that it was, this is fun. We had as a college musician, I had was pretty well traveled. Actually, as a Pine Forge musician, I was pretty well traveled.
Yeah, exactly.
Cleveland, you would know that.
Yeah,
'Cause,
definitely.
you've done the same thing. So, it was I can't connect the dots. So we'll take this course of study and we'll prepare for something that's traditional, and then maybe as I go through life, I might find some little pockets of time that I could eke out and do something I enjoy, like music or aviation or something else. Part of it was fear. For me, the fear of not being able to make a living.
Yeah.
The fear of not being accepted by the broad scope of people who I considered to be my judges, and you include parents with that, but there are others looking on who are watching your career and
good word choice.
yes,
Yeah.
and And in my life, I'll have to interject this, and those who are Christian will understand this. My growth in getting to know Christ played, I think, a large role in me hearing Christ call me to do music. I'm thankful that I was in a position to hear and understand that that was what was going on.
Right.
And that call came, and once I answered that, it has been a nonstop life since then. It's one that I couldn't have written the story about looking forward, but as I now have been blessed to have some time to look back at where I've come from, there's just some fantastic things that God has done for me, through me, and have had the chance now to know that that was a calling, and thank God I at least answered it. And even though I may have been fearful in stepping outside of my box, my financial box, my even as a musician, and you would understand this, singing in with one of the top groups in this country, in this world, really, that people can say, "Oh, you're so talented and everything, and oh, that's great. You just do such a great job." That's one thing. It's another thing when it's time to pay that car note,
Right.
or to put gas
When
in
your
the
back's
car.
against the wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those lauded comments, as much as they bolster my soul, don't go further than that.
Right.
And at some point I had to connect those, and I have to say this carefully, because it is the encouragement of many people that really kept me going. And it may sound like I'm saying that encouragement wasn't enough. However, to connect the dot between what people say, what I thought about what they said, and what God actually did. It's a complex thing, but when it's all put together, and thank God He's allowed me the blessing of being able to look back and see that, and actually even hear some of the comments about what the music that I've been involved in has done for people.
Right.
Yeah, often musicians don't even get that blessing, but that has added encouragement to me greatly, and it's really kind of knocked me in the head about well, you think you're doing nothing here, and this is the effect. That is the effect. And I would say that there are many musicians coming up who may be having trouble connecting, relating their talent to what's actually happening in their lives. Where they feel they can go, what people around them are saying. And what I can say is it is difficult to step out of your box, but it is something that more of us should be should be able to do, should be encouraged to do, because wonderful things can happen when you go beyond your finite, mind and thinking and what you think, and stretch out to what God might have you to do.
Yeah.
And wonderful things always happen
And
when that's done.
the most fulfillment too.
Yes, I definitely so. And to me, that's been icing on the cake.
Right.
I didn't really expect this fulfillment thing, but wow, man. I have a very good friend. His name is Walter Artis, who was also very instrumental in my
Great voice.
very instrumental in my in my musical development. In fact, as I spent those first years of my professional career working with Breath of Life television with Dr. C.D. Brooks and Walter Ortiz was my producer and my boss, so to speak. And he would always he was always elegant, so he taught elegance to me. He always handled people professionally, and I learned that. Those aspects of music that don't seem to be musical, but they really make a big difference in your longevity as a working musician. And the spiritual, being able to connect spirituality with your music, that your music says something, and it says it to these people, this group of people, for this purpose. Pastor Brooks was always that way. We would always have to choose a material that went along with a theme and the message. And not only was it words and melody, but it had to be musical environment, the intros, what was played, in between the little dead spots. Very
so important to the whole experience.
Very detailed approach, commercial approach to music that many people just don't really get into a lot of times. And I'm just so happy that people like Walter Ortiz and Shelton Kilby and Wendley Phipps. You may not know, many people may not know that Wendley and I still remain good friends and have been for many, many, many years. And in the earlier days of his music ministry, I produced a number of pieces of music for him. And in fact, I was his pianist for a number of years. We trapped all over the world, playing, singing, doing music together. And we learn a lot from people like this, from the experiences we have with people like that. And that has all been a part of my musical career. As I create music for other people, all this stuff has come in, and it comes out of me, that way. So step out of the box. People, don't be afraid to do that.
I think that might be like the hardest thing as far as our culture in general. Pretty much a lot of the foundation of like this country has been set on staying within. This is what we do. This is what you're gonna do. And just that's what life is. Even though okay, I can't enjoy going to work. Like, work is work, and I have my life outside of it, but this is what life is. That's just how it is. And I think just the fear aspect, fear of what others would think,
right?
Fear of sustainability, fear of looking dumb or saying that you failed or made a mistake,
right,
keeps us confined from the early stages. I'm talking about in grade school, the school system, the way it's set up. You either do it the right way, or you pass or fail, or you have to think this certain type of way, or don't even think about trying to put this on what you want to be when you grow up, because that's not reasonable, or things like that. That it's a mindset that just carries over into adulthood.
Yeah.
And I think if we could just break those chains of fear holding us back, to just even to allow us to fail.
Yeah.
And then through that failure, lots of people discover who they actually are.
Right.
And just not having that holding us back as a society, as a culture. And to my pretty much target audience as millennials right now, who are being raised into this kind of new way of thinking of, oh, I could actually do what I want to do and make a living off of it, but also having the very close influence of the generation that's right in front of us, who was brought up in a completely different system. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a certain barrier that we need to break through as far as defeating fear and its control over our futures. But also there's calculated risk in everything.
Yes.
So how do you go about breaking that wall or that barrier that you might have in front of you, or that might just be psychologically in your head?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to learn something about faith, and the best place to learn that is from Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so, making sure you are rooted and grounded in the Word, and that you have this relationship with Christ, that that's a relationship, not just doing the rules stuff. It's got to be a relationship, and in that relationship, I think Christ begins to show us, to tell us, influence us as to who we are, what we can be, and in the Word, it even addresses being in the box. There are many texts that we can get into about that Christ addresses this, quote, box of fear. In fact, God is love, and perfect love casts out fear. So in order to address your question of stepping out of that box, we have to go to Christ first. Second, in my opinion, education is key and is necessary. I think that education is a part of a person. It is not the whole person, but it is a tool, it is a subset of who you are. Mm-hmm. And that education, we must understand, that's not an end in itself, or it's not an end road. Your degree isn't an end road. If you think it is, then you're going to stop learning when you graduate from your degree. Right. But that's the time that you're just beginning to learn.
Yeah.
And as soon as many of us get that in our being, in our heads, then the learning process becomes a journey, and your college degree and your master's become sort of waypoints in that journey, but you never stop learning. That's one of the things I've discovered as a musician, that I just don't stop learning. There are certain things, you do all the time, and you've learned to score for strings, and this is how you write the voicing and whatever. Mm-hmm. But new things come along, new applications come along all the time, and if you are reverting to what you have learned I'm sorry, how you've done things over and over and over, that can be, in my opinion, a recipe for for failure, because you're just going to stop.
Yeah, straight up.
Third thing, just really quick to answer your question, and in conjunction with number 2 that I just mentioned, is that learning to solve problems, learning to make things happen is another key thing. You make it happen. You, me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so if you can get the mindset of, well, I can solve this, or I can address this issue or this problem. There's a way to do that, and really, put your mind to it, your efforts to it, physical efforts to it. It might be financial resources that might have to be put into something. You can accomplish, you can make something that you never thought was possible. You can be somewhere you never thought was possible. Okay, and any education that doesn't provide you with problem-solving skills is not a complete education, in my opinion. I am just so thankful that through the years, and the different places that I picked up my education, bits of knowledge here and there, there's kind of one common thread. I don't know how God in his timing worked this out, but I always had to be in a situation where I had to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even from Pine Forge, Mr. Jones sent us home with homework that he might have known maybe somewhat the answer to, but he may not have known that
really
we could actually,
that.
that we could
was
really
just
do
testing
that.
us.
Yeah, and you guys work on these, 300 problems there, and a few of us, would come back with this stuff done, and he'd say, "Yeah, okay." The fact that you worked on this is good, because there oftentimes was just not one particularly right answer. It was the fact that you worked on it and you could explain what you did to get it done, and the fact that you spent time trying to solve this was more of the
point of the exercise.
Yeah. So, and it continued in college, and had a group of professors there at Washington Adventist University. At the time it was called Columbia Union College, and we were graded on our ability to solve problems. We hated it coming up, but now I look back and it was just the thing we needed,
Right,
because now I'm used to that, and I'm not afraid of it. I wasn't afraid of it. I didn't know I wouldn't be afraid of it, but I'm just not. And so if there's anything I can say to answer the question you just asked, Cleavon, it would be in those 3 things: Christ, and learning to solve issues and solve problems, and fear, the fear factor, just getting rid of the fear, stepping out of your box. And
yeah, that answered it perfectly. Also wondering though, is there ever a good time to be afraid?
yes, I think there is. Fear can be a catalyst for action. It can be a catalyst for appropriate action.
Yeah, definitely.
And so being fearful for fearful's sake is not the thing that we want to, to stay in. But the fear of okay, so you guys are, I just bare my soul here, and I guess you're the only person that can get me to do that on a show like this. The fear that I have to get a project done by a certain deadline, is a good fear, probably, because it kicks me into action. Because I know that if mine isn't done, then my client is losing is dealing with a lot of money down the road, and that's going to come back to affect me. You see that?
Utilizing fear to your advantage, pretty much. Yeah.
So if fear had a good side, in my case, it would be that.
Call to action.
Yes. There's also the fear of for some of us in business, we work and then we get paid, based on the work that we do, project by project, in my case, and that can vary from month to month. You may have a good month.
Right.
You may have a month where nothing comes in.
The life of an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yes, that's the Westney Productions. That's how things can be, and used to be fearful of the fact that, well, I don't know what's coming in this month, and so I can't budget. God has blessed us tremendously, so that we have been able to ride over that financially. So I don't have those fears anymore. And whenever things get to be what most people would consider to be lean or to be,
rough patches,
you're getting to the edge.
Yeah.
I've just really been around God long enough to know that that's going to.
That comes in that faith, faith factor.
We're going through that. And without fail, that has been the case. Period.
I've been reading, I recently finished a book. Pretty sure most people know it because it's a New York Times bestselling. The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss.
Yes.
And basically what he was saying, because he kind of addresses this philosophy of fear and how it holds us back to living our fullest lives when we are most able to live our fullest lives. And what he kept going back to, not what he kept going back to, but what he stated over and over again is that either the risk that you're taking, the results aren't that bad, and they could be handled within a matter of a short time, reverse basically, or they never happen at all, and you're perfectly fine. You start back from where you were, worst case scenario. And also, or the results are that you receive an increase in livelihood or financially or whatever.
Yeah.
So basically what he's saying is you're afraid of either being able to get back to where you were extremely quickly, the fear of nothing happening, or the fear of success. So when you think about it like that, you're like, well, dang, what am I worrying about then? And just having that mindset of either I could go back, I could go forward, or I could just be where I am anyway. Kind of just takes out a little bit of that sting that you think might be there.
Yes.
And I just admonish everyone listening that if they have something that they've been struggling with in the valley of decision, just to think about it in a realistic way. I'm a very detailed person, so I will actually just write down, well, what can I lose? Okay, well, I might financially lose this amount of money that I know I could get back to that job, and I could remake that money in a short amount of time. So let me set this up so that I'm taking a leave of absence instead of quitting or something like that.
Yeah.
And writing it down so that it's tangible and organized, not going off on a whim. I think calculated risks are way better than just
Yes.
impulse moves,
Yeah.
and breaking it down. And I think that could take a lot of the sting out of the whole fear factor, of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Now we've gotten to pretty much, you are traveling. You discuss, you're traveling the world playing for artists who are singing for big audiences, the president and all that stuff. And you were at a point in your career where you kind of, I want to say made it, but not really made it. But you're comfortable. You're doing your thing now.
Yeah.
Twofold. Is there a point where you mentally acknowledge that, okay, I'm doing what I am supposed to be doing? And two, was there ever in that time a fear of maybe I should be doing something else?
Yes, and unfortunately, I guess in my case, points like that have come up more than once. I have always gone through this reevaluation of where I am, what am I doing, do we want to continue this forward, and sometimes I wonder, well, it's a lot of work. I could just be sitting
Am I really doing this? Yeah. What am I doing here? Yeah.
Especially, as things have progressed to the point where, the business was growing bigger and bigger, and doing more complicated projects involving, technologies and there's a point where you wonder, well, man, I could just take a rest, because you're out there kind of on the cutting edge by yourself, and cutting through bush that people behind you, if they're coming, it'd be easier. And if I was going behind someone, it would have been easier. But it's hard.
Pioneering.
Yeah, it's tough stuff. So you wonder after a while, well, take a rest and stop and do something that is seemingly easier. In all cases, the things I consider would be less fulfilling. And at my last reevaluation, I had decided, well, we're going to continue a little longer. Okay. And so God's given us the energy and the health and the wherewithal to keep pioneering. Right. And I used to complain about difficult projects, and I've had lots of them. Lots of unusual applications, put in situations with people or specifications that most people would say, we can't do that, or we're not going to mess with that. And we've taken them on, and I always learn something from them, and coming through them, I'm just blessed. A fulfillment factor that is way beyond description.
Yeah, the reward of all the hard work.
Even if finances weren't way beyond description, which you would want them to be sometimes, but being able to hear how people are made happy with the projects I've worked on is it just takes me, that's a big reward for me now. So.
Yeah. Wrapping up this episode, a question I thought would be good, especially for a man of your wisdom and experience of what you've been through. If there was a book and there was like every person had a page in the book, and they had one thing that they could say that they wanted people to know. Let's say it's a quote. Let's say it's a quote of yourself, a thought, a question. It could be anything. What would you put on your page?
One word you said?
No, it could be a phrase. It could be however long you want it to be.
Okay, wow. I would say that the phrase keep moving forward one day at a time would be what I would have to put on that page. Yeah. Keep moving forward one day at a time.
Why that phrase?
Well, just lately, in my own experience, I have been pushed in certain aspects of my life farther than I thought I could go, past thresholds that I thought were final, or past red lines that I thought existed. And as I have gone past those lines, I've discovered that if I thought too far down the road, I'd be scared and not proceed. But as I have taken things in little bits, I found that I got through.
One day at a time, yeah.
That's right. Little bits at a time. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't make plans for a 4-year degree or a 3-year MBA or 2-year MBA or a large-scale event, 5-year business plan, however, breaking things into little bits will, I think, help you to get through. And the phrase "keep moving forward" is we I think sometimes spend a lot of time just looking back or rehearsing things that have already happened, and in this as society progresses here, and technology has been a catalyst for this. You gotta kind of push ahead.
Yeah.
Just to sometimes just to stay even.
Keep your head above water. Yeah. Everything's moving so quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And if for a moment we become complacent and feel good about standing still, and that's the time you're actually moving backwards.
Yeah.
And that's the time you will cease and desist.
Yeah. It also plays into the fear we were talking about earlier. Lots of it comes from overthinking or looking at too much of the big picture instead of taking it one small step at a time where, okay, this is what I need to accomplish here, and it accumulates. And then next thing you know, you've solved the problem.
Yeah.
And I have it on my screensaver. I think I need to change it, though, because it's been on there for a while. I need to switch it up,
Yeah.
But it says small wins.
Yeah.
And often we look at, especially when you're starting off, you have all these big aspirations and plans that you want to go into, and you have this big vision of like, oh yeah, this is what it's going to be like, and it guarantee is not going to be like that. At least not to start off. And I think just the reward, because lots of times like we see this like with dieting and things like that, when you don't see the reward of you working out of the diet, you kind of have lackluster motivation to keep doing it because you're not seeing the results. But if you just did 1 pound,
right,
and you see that 1 pound go off,
you
maybe 2 pounds, 3 pounds,
there you go,
10 pounds. So
adds up.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and it kind of tied into the whole philosophy of fear that we were talking about before.
Yeah, and I think too that in an arena where there is not a well beaten path,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit at a time is crucial.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if you're on a well trodden path, you can just fly on, and because lots of people have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But as an entrepreneur, for instance, starting a business with a product or a service line that nobody has or few people have, and you're creating something that's new that maybe sooner or later will be, a big deal, then you may not be able to see the end of the road, or your definition of what's the success is. But that little bit at a time, solving this issue today, like you said, next issue tomorrow, and keep pushing toward that goal that you are thinking is going to be, the arrival, so to speak. And sometimes you just have to do that and take that little win today to help you be encouraged for the battle you got to fight tomorrow.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Hey, man, we should, you may have questions you might be thinking of, or others might want to ask, I don't know, later on. There's so much in my story, I guess, that I have kind of really glazed over, and there's some things that are just interesting things.
Sequel.
Yeah,
Follow-up episode.
Just we can do a storytelling,
right,
or an experience program one day.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Would definitely love that. Thoroughly enjoyed having you on this episode of the Muse Report. You dropped a lot of good knowledge that every bit of this podcast really is me finding out questions for myself. It just so happens that everyone listening is benefacting from. Yeah. Is that the word? Benefacting?
You can make it a word.
Benefactoring. Benefiting from what I'm learning. I need to go back to school and get my English together. But yeah, thank you for being on the episode. Greatly appreciated, and hopefully everyone that's listening was able to learn just as much as I did in this episode.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing with the Muse Report. I think that stretching out and helping people to stretch out of the box is really something that people can't get everywhere, and we need more of that. And so thanks for creating the program, and then for being faithful with episode after episode. Keep up the good work.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Muse Report. I hope you enjoyed it and learned as much as I did. Our guests on this episode dropped so much knowledge on us, and I hope we all take it into account going into the rest of the week. Remember, if you want to stay updated on all things the Muse Report podcast and the Muse brand, follow us on Instagram at muse_lifestyle. That's LYFESTILE. Mix up the Y and the I. And also, leave a review and a rating on iTunes so that I can get feedback to know what I need to improve on and do better. And also, maybe so you can just show some love to a brother, you know what I'm saying? So, hopefully, I will have you on the next episode. Subscribe if you want to get updated on all the new episodes, which I should be updating weekly. And going into the rest of the week, remember to always keep making your muse into reality.